It's by Joyce Spencer.
That's right. I spoke out in West, well, it was early, Bear Creek. That's where I met her at. She's a saxophonist, a great saxophonist, and she's doing great work. And as you all know, that you can send in your best to the Commission Radio Show, and we'll put it on the air. I'd like to send a hello to Fazza Nation, and also to Cole Beasley, I believe, from the Dallas Cowboys. I understand that his tracks will be playing here in the next couple of weeks. So we got Cole is doing a great job of rapping. It was just terrific. But you know, you have to learn your craft, and that's what Cheryl Smith was saying. You have to learn your craft, and I'm here with her today to learn mine. She's a journalist. I got lucky. I was a guest of someone else on a radio show. Got lucky. I was tweeting. Well, I didn't, like Donald Trump, he tweeted and he got to become president. But that's a different story.
That could happen for you.
But I got on Channel 8 because of that.
Well, see, and that's what elections are showing, and folks are saying if Donald Trump could become president, I can run for office.
Well, that's two in a row, because the last time I saw a black man get elected president, I said, oh, it could happen to me. And then when you see someone like Trump, you say, it's possible for any and everybody now. But enough said about that. We have two candidates that are running for office now. Miss Myra McIntosh, I say Miss, but hopefully one day we will be able to put another title to that. And Monique Ward, who's running for office too. Let me go ahead and give the titles to the criminal courts here. Monique Ward is running for Dallas County Criminal District Court number 1, and Myra McIntosh is running for the 265th Criminal District Court. So I'm just going to go ahead and just ask a couple of questions, and my co-host here, long time, real journalist from Florida A&M University.
That's right.
Rattler Nation. See, so we're going to talk about that, but we also have some people here from Oak Cliff, and also some people from Fort Worth. Jesse always gets on my nerves. He gets on my nerves. I always tell me you bringing people from Dallas.
Right.
Dallas. So we have Myra McIntosh. You're from what?
I'm from Fort Worth.
Fort Worth.
Born and raised.
Where about?
Southside, right there, Morningside and 35.
Morningside and 35.
Right.
Now we gotta look over at Jesse just to get your approval.
Is she?
She all right.
Yeah, okay, she all right.
My street credits.
Yeah, he'll call
What
you.
school did you go to?
Yeah.
ODY.
Okay, what about you?
Yes, ODY graduate.
Oh,
Okay,
okay, all right.
Shop
There
around.
you go. Okay, all right. So
I feel the pressure now.
You feel the pressure?
I feel the pressure.
Where you graduated from?
I graduated from Bishop Dunn High School.
Bishop Dunn. Okay, that's in Dallas.
That is in Dallas. I am from Oak Cliff.
From Oak Cliff.
Grew
That's
up
my hood.
That's my hood.
Yeah.
I grew up off of Lancaster and Sainer, off of Crest
Okay.
Avenue. So yeah.
Okay, all right. Bishop Dunn. So, why did you become an attorney? Let's start with that one.
Well, before I even considered a legal career, I actually was a teacher. I was a special education teacher in DISD. I taught special education at Whitney Young Elementary. But during my time in teaching, I'd always thought about law. My mom always said, you talk a lot, you always have all these questions. And they always used to tell me, have you ever considered law? And so one day I was just like, maybe I should think about law school. And so I inadvertently called to find out where the story goes.
Thurgood Marshall and
Thurgood Marshall School of Law in Houston,
And-
and TSU.
and TSU, and you were at Dillard University as well?
Dillard University undergraduate.
Undergrad?
Yes.
What did you do your undergrad in?
And criminal justice.
Criminal justice?
Mhm.
Okay. What about yourself, Mike?
Well, I was always interested in social justice, and even at the age of 18, I went down to the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office and said I wanted to shadow someone and wanted to become an attorney. And they let me do it, and that was just kind of life-changing to just see some the courtroom experience. From there, I went to Howard University, where you're right there in the mecca of politics, not only the HU, but right there in DC, where everything is happening, from inaugurations to people just being involved. And I went on to law school at Georgetown, but that's how I became an attorney. And growing up, I thought it was two things that if you knew both, you could do well in life.
So the historical black colleges, obviously I'm the only one here that didn't feel left out. Yeah, SMU is the historical black college when 4 or 5 of us get together.
Now, were you there when Clarence Glover was
Yeah, I was
working
at,
there?
I was at Clarence Glover, yeah. Yeah, he has a distinctive voice too. Clarence
Yes,
Glover.
yes.
Yes, I was there when he was there. And Terry Allen, I remember Terry Allen. from
Right, he's
being-
been texting me.
He's been texting you?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell you what, what's the telephone number for Terry Allen to call in at?
214-556-6239.
556-6239, so he can stop texting. Don't text and drive, Terry. Just call in on that.
I think he was trying to make his way over here. So.
Oh, he was gonna try to make it up here?
Yes, you know Terry, the SMU, you got that connection going. But and I just
Security.
want to but it's something about SMU, and SMU had a lot of problems, and it was actually the law students over there who were speaking out, and this was a couple of decades ago, because you all were having serious problems about, they were being just really racist, but we're not surprised. But when you talk about HBCUs and going on, there were certain things I think that both of you women saw, shadowing the going down to the courthouse, and there's something you have to see that when what I had done actually is spend more time at the courthouse, and I've watched how some of the judges deal with some of the defendants. With Joyce Ann Brown, I learned about not treating people like animals just because they're incarcerated, because many of those will become out on the street again, and if you treated them like animals, what do you expect them to act like? But there are just some things I've seen. Some of the judges, they talk about the temperament to become a judge,
Judicial
and I'd
temperament.
like you to talk about that, because when you're on that bench, do you further demonize, criminalize, or do you try to help the defendant become a better person in society? How do you look at that?
Right, absolutely. When I think about a judicial temperament, I think the judge should be objective, should be patient, not rush the court proceedings, but really take into account the critical analysis of what's occurring, because each case is different. I think about the person should be respectful on all regards to anybody that comes before you, because first of all, it's the accused, and they haven't been found guilty, and even if they have, they're still entitled to respect. We all are as human beings. I think that the person should be pleasant. You shouldn't have people who are mean. You don't have to be mean to be effective as a judge. You're there to do a job, and that is to make sure that everyone is receiving justice. And those are the 4 things I think about. And I think also in this climate, and for me, you have to be courageous to be a judge, and that there are some laws or some policies and procedures that occur even in Dallas County, where I'm running for judge, that needs some pushback, that needs to be changed.
And if you could go ahead and address that, and then I want you to go back on the courageous part. I'm very interested.
And I just want to kind of piggyback off of the respect part. Judicial temperament does not start as a judicial candidate or as you take the bench. Your temperament should be respectful at any point in time. And you kind of learn that at an early age from your upbringing. I've learned it from my upbringing, from my childhood, from my parents. Like, you treat people how you want to be treated. And that shouldn't change just because you have a role now, because you're going for a candidate as a judge or things of that nature. You should treat people how you want to be treated. Like Myra was saying, respect is a big factor. A lot of people in the courthouse, they want to be treated like human beings. Yes, they are in the criminal courthouse because they committed an offense, but you don't have to talk to someone as if they are an animal, like Cheryl stated, because that demeans that particular person, and you are going to get that product, like you stated before.
Courageous angle that you were talking about?
Well, for me, it starts with, I'm a proponent of just trying to eliminate mass incarceration, and one of the things that when you talk about the criminal justice system is bail reform. And Dallas County has a bond schedule that is an absolute monetary guide for the judges. And if you look in the Code of Criminal Procedure, it says that each judge should take into account the circumstances for that particular individual, what that person can reasonably pay, what the connection is of that particular person to the community. And when you look at things from an individual standpoint, that doesn't occur in some judges' court in Dallas County. And if someone's bail is $50,000, if they can't make the bail, they're forced to have real decisions of, I can't get out, so should I plead to this case and take probation although I didn't do it, or should I wait and go to trial for 6 months and my life fall apart on the outside? So you got to start there when we talk about mass incarceration, because sometimes people are forced to take pleas that they don't want to take.
And that's something folks don't understand. If you go out here, and unfortunately judges, people aren't running to give money to, they don't care about a judge until they have to be in front of them. But you have people who don't believe that there are people behind bars who are innocent. And they are. There are a lot more. And, sometimes, and I've seen judges, I think in the pop culture that we live in, that maybe there are some judges who don't have the temperament, because what pop culture has shown them is a Judge Judy or some of the other judges that are on television, and they are not good roles. They're acting. It's television.
It's entertainment.
Yes, entertainment. Yeah. And so do you go to the bench? I've heard, and I saw one judge that talked to someone about their tattoos, but they had a lot more than strips.
You're gonna have strips. Yeah.
And they had a whole lot more. It's just something that
wear a long shirt to next time.
That folks consider. But even like I have told young ladies, and there was a young lady from Fort Worth that was a stripper that was in my class at Paul Quinn.
Nice.
And she had 2 tongue rings in her, and she had piercings and everything. And before the semester was over, she had taken the piercings out, and she was dressing differently and everything. But she had had a hard life at Fort Worth, and she didn't have the guidance that she needed. Once she had the guidance, she left Paul Quinn. She went to another HBCU in Texas and pledged to sororities. She just you saw a difference in her when someone believes in her. And a lot of those folks, we just say somebody does not believe in them. You have the cases where people didn't believe in them, or there are mental health issues.
Right.
What is your stance on the mental health issues that we're dealing with?
I know that we have been in practice since June of 2013.
Right.
So
You are both in private practice.
yes,
So
we are
McIntosh
law
and Ward.
partners.
What's the name of it?
McIntosh and Ward.
I like the way y'all say it. Say it
Kind of
again.
McIntosh and Ward.
And since we've been in private practice, what we see a lot of people that are, that do have mental health problems. And I think in our community, a lot of us kind of push it under the rug or don't acknowledge it. But most, if not a majority of those cases, have some mental health disorder. Some are addicted to drugs and or alcohol. So there are all different types of factors that affect a person while they're in jail. But that mental health disorder, whatever they're diagnosed with, that is a real thing, and I think a lot of people kind of push that to the side, but that should be something we should definitely look at a little bit more.
And Cheryl, just to piggyback what you said, especially being on the defense side, we have something that prosecutors don't have, and that is we get to talk to the defendant and his families and kind of determine, we get a whole other side of the story. And since Monique and I have been in business, it's not uncommon for cases to get dismissed. It's not uncommon for a person charged with a felony to be reduced to a misdemeanor, because what may come in or what the officer may think fits an element of a crime. The prosecutor can't even prove it, or maybe the witnesses were wrong, or maybe the evidence just doesn't show it. So as far as people being in the system that shouldn't be there or not telling the truth, we're talking about all of that. Sometimes that's how bail affects people. When they're having to make those real decisions, it tends to spiral down from the prosecutors and the DA's office.
And I think what makes us unique as well is we're both former prosecutors. I was with the Dallas County DA's office for nearly 10 years, and now in private practice for about 4.5 years. So we've seen what it looks like. We've seen the types of cases, and we kind of know how to navigate through what's going on. We've read these police reports, we've talked to people, we kind of can tell which cases are valid or which cases have some merit to it. And so we are better able to kind of evaluate cases because we've seen both sides, and we're able to talk to not only the prosecutors but also the defendants and their family, just to kind of get a full picture of what's going on.
Right.
What are your thoughts about the death penalty?
In all fairness, I don't think it's not a deterrent at all. And it's not a deterrent. It's not, I mean, it's 3 times as more to imprison someone for life than it is to give them the death penalty. So it's not like a cost prohibitive measure.
Now, I know the answer, but the people at home may not know the answer. Why is it 3 times? Because, what reasons?
Right. Well, one, it's a lengthy process to pick the jury. You have to call so many juries in, and what may take like a day to pick for a murder case typically takes about 6 weeks to a couple of months to pick for a capital murder case. And so you're having to pay each individual for that. 2, the person is if they are found guilty and given sentenced to the death penalty, and only a jury can do that, a judge can't. They have like 7 years about appeal that person goes through to ensure that the judge or the prosecutor didn't make any mistakes, or the defense attorney didn't make any mistakes. So that's one of the reasons why it costs so much as well, because of all the appeals, the legal work that has to go into it.
So what are your thoughts on the death penalty?
I am against it. There again, I mean, if you just look at the exonerations, we are still exonerating people who have been charged, convicted of crimes that they didn't commit because of DNA or witness erroneous identity issues. So I'm against the death penalty, but as a judge, I have to follow the law, but I would leave it up to the citizens of Dallas County if they wanted to sentence someone to death. That's not my decision. That would be the citizens of the juries. But that's not something I'm a proponent of and would definitely advocate for.
Monique?
I definitely believe that there are disparities in the criminal justice system, things of that nature. Right now, what's in place, the law is, death penalty is constitutional. I take a different stance. I mean, I do believe in the death penalty.
So that's the reason why you looked at it. So you had these conversations with it before.
I mean, not in depth, but I do believe that, and in place right now, I believe when Craig was in office, when I was last at the DA's office, they had a committee. The committee would listen to the facts of the case and look at that particular case to see if that person was a good candidate to pursue the death penalty. I mean, it's not a decision that people make lightly. It's not something that's haphazardly, but
But some of the decisions that were made, in which the judges were stating that, I believe it was one, I can't recall exactly what it was, but he looked at the guy, the defendant rather, and said that he more than likely would commit that crime again based upon the color of his skin.
now you're talking about in the past. I'm talking about right now.
Okay, going right now.
forward.
I actually sat in on the case last year, and in fact it was going on at the same time that Commissioner Price was on trial. And you had a young person who, when I looked at the makeup of the jury, I said he's not going to get the death penalty.
Why is that?
And because there were at least 4 blacks on there. And even though heinous crime, 3 people killed, he admitted he shot them when they were asleep. I said, and I think it came back, the jury has like, 12 on it? And it came back like 10-2. And then it came back 11-1, and the judge at that time, because they had conversations, so they decided that he would forego appeals, and correct me if I'm saying terminal, he would forego appeals and just get life.
Right.
But I just saw it was really interesting because all kind of things were happening, and I guess there are some attorneys who specialize in death penalty cases, and this is, I can't remember the attorney's name, tall white guy, but he
Paul Johnson.
And he's really tall, and he was standing up, he was calling for a mistrial. Every day he called for a mistrial on something, and they said, you have to defend them vigorously, and it was really interesting just watching, but I just knew one of those 4 people would not be for the death penalty, and I knew people who were involved, and there were people saying, he needs to die, and my understanding is there were drugs involved with this, and there were just different elements. I guess the thing for me, it can be a teachable moment. I have seen judges, and you don't have to give out all of the specifics of it, but there are judges who get into office and they start coming up with initiatives. They put their footprint.
Right.
And is that something you've all been thinking about? Because I know if I became a judge, that is the biggest if in the world, because I'm not going to go to law school and I'm not going to run for office. But the one thing I noticed, and I tell people, I said, don't go to court looking like you committed the crime that you're being charged with. Because actually, the death penalty trial I was sitting in, when I walked, I would go see Commissioner Price's trial, and I would go to that trial. And at the defense table, there were 2 attorneys and the defendant. And the defendant, he actually had on a suit and a bow tie. And then, you go to Commissioner Price's trial, he's sitting there in a suit and a bow tie, but they're dressed. But then a lot of people were coming in to testify for them, or, even be character witnesses and all of that. Image is everything, and other people they will dress up a serial killer and have him looking like the jurors look, oh, he looks like my grandchild, but we don't do that.
Right.
So, are you thinking about just being a judge, or thinking about while I'm judge making a footprint that really matters?
What would be the footprint?
And going back real briefly, even on each case is kind of supposed to be looked at in conjunction with that particular case, because in that case, I'm sure there were mitigating factors that the jury had to look at or that they presented where, it could be anything. It could be whether or not the person was abused as a child, or it could have been education, or the lack of education, the lack of parenting, or whatever it is. There are a multitude of mitigating circumstances that are presented in some cases. That's why each case has to stand on its own to determine whether or not the death penalty is something that you're going forward on, and whether or not it is a viable option in each case.
Yeah, well, and before you answer, but then you have people who will go and say, I can't judge, and so they're stricken. Or they come and say, oh, no, I'm not giving anyone the death penalty.
Right.
And see, for that matter, like for me, I know where I stand on it, but I don't know that I would share any information on that. But I do know that I would rather 1,000 guilty people go free than one innocent person be put to death.
The margin of error on the death penalty has to be 0, and you still have.
And you can't have it. It's never be 0.
Right. The system is too imperfect.
Do we have any comments from the web regarding the death penalty?
No.
All right. So there are lots of other comments. We'll take those in the field. Sure.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Talk about our
your
footprints.
Yes.
I definitely believe in diversionary programs. Diversionary programs are programs that people can go into in lieu of having a felony conviction. We're both running for felony benches. There are some programs for first-time offenders, because I know that everybody was young at one point, dumb and caught and things like that. One decision, bad decision, should not affect you for the rest of your life. And I'm talking about those crimes that don't involve like violent offenses and things of that nature. So, of course, diversionary programs for first-time offenders, diversionary programs for those addicted to drugs and alcohol, because that's real as well. And there are already in place some diversionary programs for mental health. You shouldn't just be in jail because you have a mental health disorder. It shouldn't just be a place where we just cage people because they have a mental disorder. And so, yeah, we definitely want to institute diversionary programs, because if not, what's the purpose? Because like you said, most of the people that are charged with the crime, eventually they are going to get out. And so if we're not providing any services for these people, they're going to be back out on the street doing the same thing that put them in the situation initially. So of course we have to address that. We have to address rehab, diversionary programs in order to make it a better society, a better community for all of us.
Well, Cheryl, I teach at Paul Quinn College, and I've been there for 9 years as a full-time professor and legal studies director. So students and our youth are very important to us. And so when I go into those holdovers, typically what I see is an 18-year-old to 35-year-old male. He's a minority, who can't bond out of jail. And some of them are there for drug offenses, and some of them are there for violent offenses. A majority of the people in our system are placed on probation. And whether they are successful on the probation or not, what I would like to see happen, because most times they are given, like, for possession of marijuana, they may be sent to jail for that, incarcerated. Probation may be terminated and sent to jail. What I would like to see happen is if a young man or female is doing well on probation and they have enrolled in a vocation class or some kind of 2 to 4 year college, and they can present a semester worth of grades that are acceptable, I would like to see them start funneling out of the criminal justice system and having early release probations. A judge can release someone from probation early. We don't do that enough in Dallas County. If a person is on probation, they have to pay fees, an exorbitant amount of fees. They have to take off work and keep going to their probation officer. I mean, their whole life is continually interrupted, which makes it very difficult for any person to maintain a job. And so what I would like to do is start helping individuals do well. I don't think there's enough community involvement down at the courthouse. I want to bridge that gap between the community and the courts. Since I've been campaigning, I've run into so many organizations that I think are underutilized. And we can definitely say the criminal courts are under-resourced. So why are we not bridging the gap and utilizing some of these organizations that's in our community?
I agree with that.
We do have a problem. We have a serious problem. And like I said, no one cares about a judge. That's why jury duty is,
Everyone tries to get out of jury.
Yeah.
And that's the most important. That's one of the only times in the political process or in the judicial process that your voice is going to be heard, your voice count. There's no electoral college. What you say, it matters, and every vote has to be unanimous in that process. So if you could stop someone from getting 15 years to 10 years. And what I tell individuals, sometimes it's not for you to get the person off. I think sometimes either what I have seen is that people come down, either they don't want to serve, or they think their job is to get the individual off. Your job is to make sure that person gets a fair and just sentence if that person is guilty. And sometimes you as a juror can add a different element that the average juror, because most jurors, you're not going to walk into court and see 12 minority panel for Nerman on the jury. It just doesn't happen.
Unless you're in Washington, D.C.
Unless you're in Washington, D.C. It's not going to happen in Dallas County. And in my 16 years, it hasn't happened. So you are lucky if you get 1 or 2 minority individuals on that panel, and they can add some kind of historical context.
You just
or
hope
culture.
they're going to be strong.
Right.
Hope they're going to be strong. But when you have people who don't want to jury duty, and I hear from mothers, and they say, it was an all-white jury, and I said, well, have you served on a jury before? Because you never cared about whether it was an all-white jury until you needed for some others to be on it. So can you be there? And that's what helped. And I looked at both trials. I said I was watching Commissioner Price's trial and the other mass murder trial, and there were blacks on both. And I was really happy, that we were there. But the second thought was, can you be strong?
Right.
Can you stand by your convictions? Will you buckle under someone? Because sometimes people can be very heavy-handed.
Right. And back when Craig Watkins took office, they found letters or memorandums from the administration to prosecutors from the 80s saying, don't let African Americans or Hispanics on the jury, they tend to be soft on crime.
Say that again. I want everyone to hear that.
So there was memorandum sent out before Craig Watkins took office where they found in the archives that was saying don't let African Americans or Hispanics on the jury because they tend to be soft on crime. So we have what is called a Batson challenge, meaning that prosecutors who have to prove the case, defense attorneys don't have to do anything really, but prosecutors who have to prove the case, if they're striking a minority, not for legal reasons or causes, but just because they're a minority, a defense attorney can Batson challenge, meaning why are you striking this person? You have to give reason, and you need judges. They can recognize and say, why are you striking this person? And no, this person deserves to be on the bench. They haven't said anything that warrants you striking them, and that's important that you can have someone to recognize that and call it for what it is.
And I heard a lot of terms when I was back in the day when I was working with Commissioner Price. We spent a lot of time in courtrooms, so the Batson challenge. I heard that a lot because we were trying to make sure we got some people. They were trying to strike every black person off.
And that's the importance of people not just coming to jury duty saying, I don't want to be here, or I don't want to judge this particular case. We need every racial makeup on a jury. Same with the prosecution's office. I know when I came back to Dallas and started working at the DA's office, I had some friends and some family members say, "You're working for the DA? You're a district attorney?" You know, in Dallas. And I was like, well, you need us here in the office as well. We need to have minorities in the DA's office. We need to have minorities as defense attorneys. We need to have minorities that are involved in the
defenders,
right.
Judges.
Yeah, I mean, we need us involved, and I thought that I did a great job of explaining it to family and friends, because when I read this particular police report, I may have a totally different perspective, let's say from someone else who graduated from SMU, who read the police report. And so you need someone who has reasonableness and, you know, has different backgrounds and different, you know, things going on in order for justice to occur.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, one thing, and we have to give a big shout out to former District Attorney Craig Watkins.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yes.
You know, and he should still be in office. And, you know, and we all have issues that we need to deal with, but, you know, here was someone who he humanized the district attorney's
Yes.
office, because we just never, you know, the idea of having anything to do with them, just like, and we're kind of seeing that with our new Dallas police chief, you know, because our children should not grow up afraid of the people we're supposed to protect and serve them.
Correct.
You know, you should have, you know, judges need to get out more. Don't just be behind the bench and go to other communities. You're in those other communities, come to all communities. And that's something we need to see, not just in the legal field.
Right. And I really like to thank Craig, because Mr. Watkins, gave us an opportunity as African Americans, as minorities, to come into the DA's office. When I worked, I was a prosecutor for 12 years. Tarrant County had more African Americans working over there than in Dallas County. When Craig came in, he started hiring a lot more. His hiring process was a lot more diverse. And
was he criticized for it?
And he was absolutely criticized for it. And what's so funny is that out of all the African Americans he hired, we weren't even still 1/3 of the attorneys in the office. And everybody kept saying, you have a lot of African Americans, and we're not reflective of the entire community.
Well, that's one of the things that you realize when there is an increasing amount of African Americans. Some people will say that there's one too many. One too many.
Yeah. And you're talking about that, and talking about how there are, yes, Dallas County has the most African American female judges than any county in the country, and some people are saying, well, you didn't say anything when it was all white.
Right.
But there
when
does
Henry
have
Wade was writing those
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so there's a thing, but there has to be something. I've heard from people that, you know, and most of the judges are Democratic, so there needs to be some schooling going on. And I know you have like judge court or something. That's not what it's called.
Training. Judicial training.
But there are some things, just like I say, everything isn't in the book. There are some things that folks need. You have to have those honest conversations with folks so that we can be prepared, so you don't just become a one-termer, and so that you're doing the best you can be. And I think, you know, like with any profession, even, you know, as a professor, as a journalist, there are so many people I lean on, and I ask, hey, did I do the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? I don't think that I'm doing the right thing all the time. You know, you hear people say, oh, I don't agree with everything they do. And I say, well, I don't agree with everything I do. You know, I need some help with things. Going forward, let's say you're both sitting on a bench, but even before you get on the bench, who do you see as those people who have been just like phenomenal, that you look like? I look at folks who are great writers, folks that I say, you know, if I could lead with the same integrity, if I could work with the same, you know, voice and do the things that they did, that I'm doing good things. Who do you hold?
And we'll get that question answered when we come back. We're at the top of the hour. That's a good question. We're at the top of the hour, so we're gonna go ahead and take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll get that answer. But you brought up, before we go to that break, well, the DA, the former DA, Craig Watkins.
Right.
Craig Watkins, I remember Craig Watkins, the first time I saw him, he was 8 years old, playing Little League football with my brother. So that's how long I've known Craig Watkins, so I've always had a great admiration for him, even when he was playing with the Blazers YMCA football team, fast guy did. But Mr. Watkins did a very credible job in making sure that we integrated into the judicial system in Dallas County more African Americans, period, African American females. And we'll talk about that on My Voice, My Opinion tomorrow. Take a break and we'll be right back.
You okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm good.
Not nervous?
We're doing okay?
I'm not nervous, are you?
Yeah.
Okay, we played the drops. You can keep it going on that one.
So what was your question, Cheryl?
About like someone
Your influences.
Yeah, you influence someone that you aspire to be like, or you like the way they serve. Just someone,
For
your
judges
role
or
model.
anybody? Okay.
So those people who are influential in your life. Are we still, are people still hearing us?
Right.
I was gonna say some other things.
I can't.
Oh, you don't have to mute it. No, I stand by what I